I'm really glad that you guys invited me on because I've so loved this podcast ever since I first started listening to it. I'm
And
I'm glad that I can contribute something.
well, thank you for being on because you are, I think, one of our earliest, in many ways, like supporters, like from the beginning when we were just trying to figure it out, when we didn't even know what audio leveling was.
Yeah.
Like, none of us had editing experience. Like, this is my first time really
Mhm.
editing audio together like this.
Yeah, and apart from putting some simple things together for radio,
Mhm.
really nothing of, long format spoken word.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've been in the trenches with us, giving us feedback, letting us know, just good advice on how to move things around a little bit, to keep things more concise. Like we're so grateful to you, and also just the endlessly good weekly phone calls and chats where we've
Yeah.
debriefed about all manner of the horrors of occultism.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Seriously.
Yeah, the amount of people on the internet who will demand your money to tell you that you should aspire to less.
Right.
Mhm.
Uh yeah, that is yeah, kind of
Yeah.
ridiculous.
I mean, take me
Or
out to
stop
dinner.
asking stupid questions.
Yeah, yeah, or take me out to dinner first before you tell me, to want less from life. No, absolutely. Well, it's super exciting, and one of the things that I really appreciate about our friendship is just the joy of experimentation of, like, a um, I maybe we gotta have you on for another episode. I'm sure for many in the future, there's so many things we could talk about, but we gotta do, like, a new Avatar Power one or
Oh
something.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's what I love about and I've never heard a concise or clear history of it, but, like, the Parker Press and the, Finbar Publishing, like, there was some stuff that was being written in the early '70s, late '60s that is legit chaos magic,
Mhm.
where it's all about making servitors and charging them with your chakras, but all in this weird self-help framework in the yeah, just years before it was ever, like, big in the occult scene. So, like, where did these people come from?
And they got, like, the LBRP in there and a bunch of other things, but one of what, like, fascinates me is also just the blurbs in between, like,
Yeah.
Molly was poor and she had all these problems in her life, but then she did this and now she's rich, it was
Yeah.
very, it's cheesy and but also very cute.
Yeah,
It makes
but
me think
also
of
I love the how it's, like, not adjusted for inflation. So it's
yes.
like Sally and very gendered, right? Sally was a secretary who wasn't appreciated by her boss, so she made a servitor to manipulate her boss into giving her a raise, and now she's making 15 extra dollars a week, which is just like, if you told me how to do a thing and I was making it got me 15 extra dollars a week, I'd be like, it's not literally nothing, but
Yeah,
that's coffee for a couple of days in New York.
yeah. Maybe half a bagel.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jesus.
One of the things though that I've always, just back to that earlier point, always appreciated about um finding weird texts like this, or just anything that I come across where I'm like, what the fuck is this? Peter is usually the first person I would go to and be like, you want to try this?
The answer is yes, and he'll also have, several audio courses to suggest you to complement it.
Yeah. Well, that's what like because so many of my friends are really amazing occultists. I spend a lot of time trolling occult Reddit just to like,
Mhm.
get an understanding of like the baseline, lowest common denominator or whatever. And it fascinates me that so many people are like they're asking questions around can I do this? Can I do that? It's like fuck around and find out. Like that's
Mhm.
what so, to take a step back, like I dropped out of my PhD program in anthropology and moved back to New York in Brooklyn a couple of years, about a decade ago at this point, and I just really naturally fell in with Al Cummins, Cadmus, and Vincent St. Roche. A few people who were just like amazing, brilliant occultists, and the one thing that I learned from them very quickly was just that the thrill of experimentation, like fucking around and seeing if something works is just like not just a legitimate thing you can do, but like the core to your occult practice. And so that led me to be much more like willing to just go out on a limb and being like, hey, like right now I'm working through new avatar power with a friend of just like, this is silly, but let's fuck around with it. And we're getting results. So like, can't complain.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, that's kind of how Key and I's friendship even started, was just tossing little books and pamphlets and grimoires and techniques back and forth. Because, like, we both practice traditions that we can't really speak about too openly and can't necessarily share with each other always. So these experiments became the kind of path of commonality to be like, okay, this does not require initiation. This does not necessarily require us to even learn each other's, cultures and languages in all depth. Like, let's do this as like a way to practice magic together or to kind of fool around with it. And so, like, a lot of our experiments with the PGM or with Pentacles kind of began out of this practice. And now, also like Black Pullet and a few other things. It's been a lot of fun. And even the what you were saying with like new avatar power, like there's so much in that genre that I think people might turn their nose on, but at the same time, the reputation of those kinds of books is not terribly different from any other kind of like pulp, mass printed paperback, essentially like a grimoires. I was just speaking with one of my teachers in Brujeria, Alex, about the Black Pullet and just the incredible reputation it has in Mexican sorcery as like a very dangerous, actually, grimoire, even though many occultists dismiss it, like in the West, as a forgery, or it's just like, they're like, oh, it's just the seals and the rings, like whatever.
It's the thing you find at the Botanica for $10 in that black cover with gold embroidery. Edition,
And yet, like, that is the grimoire. Like, that is not only just because it's contained in the various books of Saint Cyprian as like in its own standalone chapter, where instead of the Napoleonic soldier who receives this information from this old man in the pyramids, it's actually Jonas Suferino himself, like the alleged like German monk.
Oh, really?
Yeah, actually was the one who received, the Book of Cyprian. That's like the framing narrative in many of the Cyprian books of the Suferino variety. But also, like, they have other names. Like, for example, one of the ones he told me about was like, it's not the Black Pullet in some printings, it's the Black Owl. It's like La Lechuza Negra, as like an additional kind of terrifying translation.
Yeah, there were some editions that I came across that were like the Black Screech Owl.
Yeah, exactly.
Treasure of the Old Man of the Pyramids, or like alternate reprint.
Yeah. And also, you don't have to fuck around with it too much to see that there's something really powerful there, right? Like, I do a lot of Black Mirror scrying in a Psychomantium with Vincent St. Roche. Like, we would, like, for a while, every week, he would just come over and we just grab different things and just scry it and see what the spirits around it were. And I vividly remember the Black Pullet, where, like, it felt very different from any Solomonic stuff and was just so tangible. And it was like an oasis of energy, like opening up in my apartment hallway. It was really intense.
Yeah, absolutely. So, don't discount these things, people. Like, go see them yourself. And as you'll hear in this episode, there's plenty of ways to actually weigh that energy out and see how it feels.
Yeah.
Which you may hear. It's Svinga.
Yo.
And boundaries key.
Boundaries.
Keeping them, enforcing them.
Yeah. Having good energetic hygiene.
Traversing them
at times.
Expanding them.
Allowing them to be porous at times and solid in others. And if you are interested, this is
if you're interested in porous boundaries.
Oh no! Oh god! Yeah, for if you're interested in traversing one particular financially gated boundary, check us out at patreon.com/the Frightful Havels. We have a bonus episode every month curated by and just for our patrons. It has been described as a Q&A that at times is Frightful House After Dark, sometimes nonsensical, always hopefully informative. Several people have said that it is more helpful to their magical practice than many courses they paid hundreds of dollars for, and we give it out for $10 a month.
So come check us out.
Yeah, indeed. We also have a Discord server. It's very thriving. Lots of really cool people, various magicians and practitioners of all kinds of stripes, hanging out, sharing their cat photos, their plants, and their thrift finds, as well as all kinds of funny music. A monthly live occult book club where we discuss a text or movie, etc. of your choosing. This month, believe it or not, it's actually the anime Freyrin Beyond Journey's End.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Show notes for every episode, and a whole tier of monthly group spell work from us on your behalf.
Also, while you're there, remember to give us a like, a rating, and a review on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you might be listening to us. Shoutouts to the Pod Bay, the Podbean, Stitcher heads out there.
Yeah. For those for whom YouTube and iTunes and other things are not enough.
If there's anyone streaming us on like a web SDR wave thing, hit us up, please.
Please, yeah. He loves short form radio.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And, all those ratings help us to fight the demiurge of the algorithm.
And what a demiurge it is. It's recently gotten stronger through AI slop.
Yes.
Yeah.
Give us your energy.
Give us your energy. Yeah. And check out our services. Key offers personalized coaching in magic and mediumship, sorcery for hire, readings, Lenormand coaching, custom talismans, oils, and tools. I offer Balkan Femimancy readings, and both of us offer occasional limited occult wares over on withcunningandcommand.com.
And last but certainly not least, hit us up on social media. Sminga is at Dragon Cunning, and I am at barnowl.key. And as you heard in today's intro, we have a guest.
Yeah, that very dear friend, excellent occultist, just absolute wizard of creativity and incredible alchemist of all manner of things. Please welcome to the show, Peter.
Thanks for having me.
We first actually really, you've been in our Discord server and we've chatted quite a lot about the podcast. You've been an early supporter and a huge source of help for us, really, as we kind of got our footing. But we actually recently plugged you. It was in our Patreon when someone was asking about energy work and in the Q&A and saying, like, look, I don't really come from a practice that really entails any of this. Like, where can I get started? In addition to like plugging a few different Qigong books and different practices, noting that primarily for the both of us, we've been learning from yourself and from Maria, really, who we've also had on the show in terms of Qigong. We plugged one of your Salem talks, at Salem Witch Fest, which was all about Qigong for magicians. And this year, actually, we'll be at Salem in person, and so will you, to give an awesome talk on how to move a body, energy calisthenics for grumpy necromancers.
Yeah. It's something that I'm really looking forward to sharing with a wider audience. I recently, I guess not recently, over a year ago, I became a priest in Quimbanda. And once that happened, my spirits in Quimbandeiro started kind of teaching me a new form of energy work that combines a lot of things that I've previously been studying, but also kind of takes a few steps a few steps forward. And I noticed that once I started doing it, my spirit contact, my level of grounding, and just there was no one dramatic effect, but it was like a lot of little things just started working a lot more efficiently and a lot more clearly. So I'm really glad to have an opportunity to teach it to a wider audience.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, maybe when we can start off a little bit, just if you don't mind telling folks a little about your background. You mentioned that you're also in Quimbanda, like us. I wanted to know a little bit about how you got started in energy work. What kind of cultural framework immersed you in that? How did you kind of get your footing in? And then we'll chat a little bit about how this has been so pivotal to basically every other practice and experiment that you've done.
Yeah, well, I should start out by saying, clarifying to your audience who can't see me, I am an old. I grew up a while ago, and back in the days before Spotify, where the local radio station, WFMU, that had a really amazing punk show every, I want to say Thursdays. Like right before the punk show, they would play an hour of Alan Watts lectures.
Uh-huh.
That's
So
awesome.
I just started kind of listening to Alan Watts when I was showing up early to listen to the punk music.
Mhm.
And that's what got me interested in kind of Taoism, Buddhism, the whole idea of meditation, and just thinking about the fact that other cultures have different worldviews that differ from mine, and what are the assumptions of my worldview. Um, at the same time, I was in high school. I had people threaten to beat me up because they thought I was a gay, and it being the 90s, the principal didn't want to do anything about it. So when I said to him, like, "Hey, it's clear that you're not going to provide for my physical safety, so I'm going to I'm going to take such steps as I deem necessary to defend myself," and started carrying weapons to school to defend myself. Never got a chance to use them, but I started reading books like How to Be a Ninja, Ninja Secrets of Mind Control, Ninja Secrets of Invisibility. I had shoplifted an entire shelf of ninja books.
Hell yeah.
And one thing led to another, and my junior year of college, I went to Beijing to study abroad. Wound up meeting an amazing kung fu master, taking time off from school, and with a couple of friends, I just like every day I would wake up, do an hour of energy work, an hour or two of kung fu, and I started practicing kind of mainly three related styles of kung fu: Xingyi, Taiji, and Bagua, that are all kind of based on a form of inner energy cultivation and translating that inner energy into power. At the same time, and then I started going back and forth. I've probably lived in Beijing for about 5 years total, spending much of that time, doing a lot of kung fu, a lot of qigong, and other forms of Taoist meditation. Um, then it was in the early 2000s I started getting into the occult, and it was way but right now there is a wealth of there are probably too many resources on how to work with spirits and how to different grimoires, but back then it was very limited, at least from what I could find. So I wound up falling into a very psychologized form of chaos magic, which was very useful, but to a point. So it was a lot of things like finding emotions within me, projecting them into balls of energy, and kind of negotiating with them as if they were spirits, and then reabsorbing them into my body. So very much like internal family systems therapy, with magic, I guess. Then I kind of put that down as I went into grad school, wound up having a horrible time dropping out of grad school, coming back to New York where I'm from, and yeah, just falling in with a bad crowd of necromancers and Quimbandeiros and whatnot. And kind of one of the pivotal things that happened was I knew our Tata, Jesse Hathaway Diaz, socially, and he invited me to his Ocha birthday. Some Orisha rituals in his apartment up in the Bronx. And I remember vividly when I walked in, there was just this vibrant feeling of healthy energy just permeating everything to an extent that I had never felt it before. And I remember asking him, like, "Wait, you just call the spirits in and this is what happens? Like, you don't have any yogic cultivation techniques or anything like that?" And it
Mhm.
just kind of blew my mind that working with this class of spirits, or this grouping of gods, could have such a transformative impact on a space, and is what got me interested in Afro-diasporic religions, Kimbanda and Ocha.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Um,
Great. And then from there, that was actually the first time that we met. Is when I was on a mat and Peter rolls in and hands me some heart of palm soup.
Oh.
yeah. Yeah, which was really, I mean, and that's what I've loved about the community around our Kimbanda house, is just it's brought us in touch with so many different people, and also just interesting people with a spirit of experimentation that we can kind of learn from, even apart from the Kimbanda that we're doing.
Absolutely, yeah. There's always room and space and encouragement to explore things, to let things take a root in our own ancestries and our own practices. Just the seeing the you mentioned after becoming a priest, you were able to like receive all this new information from your spirits that ties back into your energy work, and it makes sense. Like they are going to play with what you already know, and they're going to want to enhance it. And that's one of those things that I mean, my Kibana has certainly, and cross pollinated greatly with a lot of my Balkan witchcraft practices, and naturally so. Like, how could it not? These spirits don't just exist in separate shelves and cabinets; like they communicate with each other.
Mhm.
I think that when you're mentioning, like, the kinda just start in chaos magic, I was just thinking about how many times I think on the podcast, Kate and I have kind of remembered way before we met to being kind of on the similar websites of, cyballs and energy constructs and programming things and servitors, just as, like I mean, I was raised in a different tradition, but I was aching for something in English to speak to about with people about, to be like, "Here is something we can share in common, here is something we can do together." That doesn't is not just gatekept by like secrecy taboos and by a different cultural lens. Like I wanted to talk to other practitioners about spirits and about magic, but I needed some kind of common vernacular.
Hmm.
And so some of these things were what I kind of started with, to be like, okay, well, if, we can start with the PGM, or we can start with certain grimoires. Just I guess in the generation where I grew up a little bit, it was already way more normative to talk about spirits being ontologically real,
Mhm.
and, which is certainly the environment I grew up in. But it was great to hear, Kiga his start with chaos magic,
Yeah.
and it was great to see how some of those energetics were what really showed him, like, oh, there's so much more to spirit, and how spirit can have bodies, but not necessarily physical bodies or partially physical bodies that are nevertheless comprised of other substances.
Yeah, of course. Like all of that chaos magical stuff still informs like a lot of what I do. And I think you and I have gone at length about this kind of in our own friendship and just interactions and stuff, Peter. But the way that we talk to parts of self or construct new parts and bodies and containers for things and use those as kind of tools all unto their own, um, to make and do things and even to give them to spirits that are existing independently of us to manipulate, play around with, fill, empty, whatever it may need to be. So kicking that around and comparing different vernaculars with that shared language really gets
Yeah.
into the weeds with that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I find really I think it's fascinating that there are kind of two strains that people can take when they deal with energy work within a cult context. There are some people like there's this amazing guy called Merlin Starlight, who wrote a few books on mind magic, which like it was interesting. I don't know how I found out about him, but I was immediately set with the immediately had the urge to buy all of his books, and then
Mhm.
soon thereafter, he completely disappeared. And years later, I was trying to find out any information about him. And I found other people on Reddit who had the same experience of like, my sense is like he set up the bat signal. Anyone who's going to benefit for this, come and get it. And then just disappeared from the occult scene altogether. But he has a very based framework within which he does magic. And his attitude is you don't need all that spooky ritual and weird spirits. You can just do it in this sterile kind of effective minimalist way. Whereas my attitude is like, what happens if we combine the two? What happens if we use energy work as a framework to call in weird spirits and empower them, creating an energy ball or whatever to create an environment where it's easier for a spirit to have a body and to manifest stronger, so then you can talk to them in a way that's easier than a full ritual evocation, but is not as sterile as just like putting ideas into an energy bubble.
Mhm. No, it's there's something about people like that who come in hot with, like, "Here's the concepts, and I'm not even looking for fame, no goodbye,"
Yeah,
My
yeah.
final message,
Yeah.
peace and love on planet Earth, and then they fade into obscurity. No, absolutely. I guess maybe we can start with, and this by no means needs to be, fully, encompassing everything that this term could mean. But let's maybe start with what exactly is energy. Like when we're talking about spirits as ontological beings, that have intentionality, they have their own personalities, they have their own desires and will, and we are spirits. We just happen to have bodies. Is how I like to think about it. Um,
Yeah.
that body is less it's obviously it's important, but it's in some ways also an accident in terms of like it's not a necessary property of being a spirit, but it's certainly an important one that we're incarnated, and many spirits seek to be reincarnated. They want physical form. They experience some distress when they are not embodied in certain ways, or they look for kind of memory and remembrance if they are formerly dead, or formerly
Yeah.
alive, I should say. But when we talk about energy, because there's many different kinds of systems that describe forms of energy,
Yeah.
different kinds of energy centers in the body that can be cultivated. When I first met like local people involved in different yogic practices, they often stress to me that like, hey, when you see seven chakras, just so you know, it's not that it's not real. It's just that it's not all there is. There are many chakras, and you could develop them. Like certain deity yogas require you to develop certain numbers that are way beyond seven, and you literally create them in some ways. Like you imagine them and you build them until they become like an interface between you and that god. And for other kinds of deity yogas, it's different. It's different systems of chakras and so on. So when I talk to Maria, she's always, being like, "Oh, well, this is about your spleen chi, this is about your liver
Yeah.
chi," and so on, right? So I guess maybe even beyond individual cultural systems, your background is very much in Chinese metaphysics, but how would we maybe describe what are we talking about when we're discussing energy in a magical perspective? And in some ways, I think it's obvious to us, but I would love to hear a good, kind of expansion of like, what is your pitch? Like, why is this important? Why should occultists care?
Gotcha. Okay, so there are a few things there. Let's go through them one by one.
Yeah.
But I would start by saying, when the first time I lived in Beijing, a classmate in the study abroad program was doing a presentation on qi, and so she asked my kung fu master about chi. So we had this intense hour-long conversation where I just remember looking at the notebook where he was like writing, drawing things out to explain things, and there was like Darwin, the origin of the species, DNA, various I Ching trigrams, and whatever. And then halfway through, or a certain point into it, he says, "But you don't practice qigong, so you can't really understand this at the level of like me," and he pointed to me and my class, Peter and the other classmates that were training with him, and their understanding is so much deeper. And I was like, "Oh wow, when can I get this this deeper explanation?" Because it seemed pretty intense, right? And then when I asked him, like, "Okay, so what's that deeper explanation?" A few months later, he just said, like, "Well, chi is kind of a middle point between your mind and your body, and so if you cultivate your chi, you can use your mind to affect your body more." And that was it. So that's always kind of taken me on a very anti-theoretical perspective to chi, where
Mhm.
the point is to practice. And that's something that was is kind of I found endlessly frustrating with a lot of new age treatments of the chakras, energy work, whatever, where it's just like endless yammering and very little in the way of like a concrete practice that you can do. Um, to talk about it from a metaphysical perspective, there is Wu Ming Sheng, Yi Sheng, R Sheng, Wang Wu, right? The nameless gave forth the one, which is the Tao. The one gave forth birth to the two, which is yin and yang, and the interactions between yin and yang created the manifest existence, right? So within Taoist metaphysics, qi is like a continuum of energy, spirit, consciousness, and matter in the most broadest sense possible. It is the fabric out of which all of existence is woven. So the creation of existence is this outpouring of energy that settles in different levels of condensation. At the most refined, it is spirits and gods and heavenly realms. At its most base and unrefined, it is physical reality. And it's kind of this fluid that's going between these poles of different kinds of energy, different expressions within the five phases with like wood, or what's it called? Your spleen, chi, sorry, that's earth. and whatnot. So it exists in the body, it exists around you, and there's kind of this fluid that's constantly transforming and circulating. So
Mhm.
chi means that, but then chi is also a specific level of energy or kind of energy in the body that you can kind of work with. Right. It's very hard to immediately start manipulating spirit, but chi is something that is accessible to you. And it's the energy that flows through your meridians through like that's worked on in Chinese medicine. And so like why is it important? One is that it's just good for health and it's good for settling your mind. I have insane ADHD. My first year of college, I think I technically failed and then wound up bringing my point to not failing. Like I just crossed the line out of not to not get kicked out, just because I had a lot I couldn't focus on things. It was very difficult for me to meditate because I couldn't, still my mind. It was like I would meditate while listening to John Zorn just to have something as chaotic on the outside as my mind was on the inside. And then after spending a year where I was doing, qigong for an hour a day, hour a day, I could focus on anything and I got straight A's, right? So, within, and please jump in if I'm bouncing around too much, but within Taoist cultivation, you can either work actively or passively. Passively is refining your mind through meditation, and that will automatically bring your energy system into accord or into balance. Or you can do active stuff, moving your energy around, and that will automatically bring your mind into a settled state. Because my mind was so, ADHD ridden, I had to work on energetics, movements, right? I had to do stuff where I could like be standing, moving around, and that then got me to the point where I could focus and concentrate. The way that, first of all, anything unclear about what I just, all that yammering I just did?
Not yammering at all. I found that incredibly illuminating. Like even knowing your story more, personally, just through being friends, like that was really concise. And I appreciate so much the kind of differentiation between active and passive forms. I think it's really helpful because, when you said that you went to Tata's apartment and you felt this very peaceful, very stable energy, and even if it's not necessarily being engaged with through energy work, although we know he certainly has plenty of those practices too. I
Oh
think
yeah.
it just goes to show that, like, okay, so spirit cultivation practice where certain deities and spirits are constantly being propitiated and invoked, and there's an attempt to embody them too. There's an attempt to live by their authority and by their sense of peace. The advice that they give you, the attempt to bring stability to your life when we try and live a life closer to theirs.
Yeah.
It's gonna change your energy. It's gonna change, on just not even a passive level, there's gonna be a kind of cultivation taking place through permutation, through the kind of diffusion of those spirits. Like I've hung out with many people who've been very curious to know like what is that energy around me, and it's a certain
Mm,
main spirit that I have, and I normally hide that quite a bit, but
yeah.
when he's more present, people really pick up on it, and they're like, oh, there's something there. Like what is that? I've had plenty of people who are kind of more involved in Eastern practices who are like, "What is that like heavenly mountain dragon thing around you?" And I have
Yeah.
to kind of explain a little bit from my culture, like what that is. But like, really, it doesn't. It's not that it's culture specific, right? It's that
Mm,
these things are nevertheless, like you were saying, it's a medium point between spirit and body in our bodies, right? You hear about it being something that we have as living people. There's a kind of living version of that, but there's also spirits who manipulate it. There's
yeah.
versions of it for them. Like I've had spirits tell me things about their spirit organs. They're not just hollow right on the inside, but they move it themselves. Like when I talk to spirits, often what I'm asking them is like, "How did you do that? Like, what were you doing when I asked you to bring me that money or to manipulate this thing?" And they're like, they'll describe how they move power. And they move like the things that can create, that can influence and also create. And so I really appreciate what you were sharing, as well as the I think those well, magicians and our neurodivergences, right? With all of us being kind of on that spectrum too, it's just the notion of like, how do we focus and how do we not feel ashamed that we can't always do what we think is meditation? Like
Yeah.
people ask me all the time, it's like, oh, because I mentioned meditation has been hugely helpful for my mental health and also spiritual practice. Just the discernment, to know what is my emotion, not a different spirit's emotion, to know what's my projection, or how my anger is being influenced by the anger of warrior spirits around me, who are a lot more easily offended in some ways than I am, and other things that are not at all offended the way that I am and want me to kind of put my ego aside. But really, when people describe struggling, right, like, oh, I just couldn't focus, or maybe that's a matter of learning, and finding what you were describing as a way to help you kind of retain that focus. But I think it's also part of the journey too, right? Like,
Yeah.
part of you are actively meditating even when you think you're not, because you're trying to bring your mind back when you notice that it's straying. Like, that is meditation. It's not always fun, but it's definitely part of the process.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think one of the most important things that impacts that energy work in general and the energy work system that I'm going to be teaching in particular is that a lot of you got a lot of energetic schmutz on you.
Mm,
And there are systems of energy that circulate within you and without and around you, and strong emotions can create tension within them or stuck energy. People talk a lot about blockages. Often, it's not just blockages; it's just patterns of energy that are vibrating or working in ways that are not beneficial to you, right? If you think about the vast majority of people are doing magic either for love, sex, money, jobs, or vengeance. That's probably
mm,
like somewhere between 70 to 99% of magic that anyone does, right?
yeah.
And or healing. Throw that in there too. And all of these are things that we have a lot of strong emotions around and a lot of strong emotional baggage around. And cultivating strong energetic boundaries is also a way of creating a container in within which you can cultivate the things you want to draw into your life, right? You can do all the magic you want to do to find a romantic partner. If you're not the kind of person who lives a certain life that can accommodate a partner, it's not good. Okay, someone's gonna come in and come out as quick, come in and then leave as quickly as they came. I find that there's a strong emphasis on like obsession magic these days,
Mm,
in terms of love magic, when I think love on crossing is the most important thing you can do before
mm,
doing love magic, because you have to
mm,
work on all of this emotional baggage you have around loving yourself, around having space in your life to be able to feel love before you can have a stable and a fertile relationship. So the system that I've developed is about a, creating these boundaries around you, and B, then clearing it out of all the schmutz. And while you're practicing, people that I've taught this to have noticed strong emotionally charged memories coming up when they're doing it. Right? You have. I mean, I would find, I'd be doing. I just remember vividly the second time I lived in Beijing, I was studying with my master's master this style bagua that involves. I was put in front of a tree and told to walk around the tree in a certain way for like a half hour, 2 hours at a time. My master's master was be hanging out, smoking cigarettes, talking shit with his friends, and every like 10, 15 minutes or so, someone would come and correct me what I was doing and then keep on going. And I remember, like, every now and again, I'd get just a visceral feeling of embarrassment about something that happened when I was in second grade. And it's like, okay, where are
mm,
these memories coming from? And it's that when that happened back then, it created a tension within me. And when you release the tension, you get an echo of that feeling as it releases. Right. So
mm,
releasing all of your emotional baggage around money then creates a container that you can welcome money into. Releasing all of your emotional baggage around love can create a container within that you can then draw in the possibility of being loved. So there's that element of just like basic self work, and not to sound like too much of a hippie. Um, but then there's also kind of combining energy work with traditional spirit technology, right? Franz Barton was very big in, or one of his basic, preliminary practices is charging food with the energy of the intention of what you want to bring into your life, right? Bringing health into your food and then eating it as a way to make it part of you. And you can do the same thing with spirit offerings, right? Energize water with prosperity and then put it in front of your spirit altar so that A, it makes it a more valuable offering, and B, it charges, it communicates what you want the spirit to do.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Even just thinking about like Buddhist visualizations to multiply offerings, like you see the incense forming and then you
Yeah.
multiply it so that it reaches many other classes of beings, or you're directing it in some ways to be like, okay, I want this to go to my land spirits, I want this to go to my lineage guardians, I want this to go to the spirits I've offended without being aware of it, and
Yeah.
that it may satisfy them, may there be peace between us. I think that it's been pretty important for me to just know, like, one way that I do a form of this is by doing the sign of the cross over water and like blessing it in some way and saying this is what I'm tasking it to do. Like that is its own kind of energy programming. But I also like the idea of putting a sigil into the water and charging that sigil and letting it permeate through the
Mhm.
glass. Or what you were talking about, like the releasing of emotions, I think is so important because some people stop there. They get scared, right? And like rightly
Yeah.
so. It's terrifying to confront, like, you're doing lever drawing work and you're having to go live through like a bad memory of when you were a teenager and you were humiliated socially in some way and you felt like, okay, I'm not beautiful enough to have a lover. I'm never gonna be the person who gets to have true love. And then realizing that like your mind is actually calling to attention the very thing, like the knots, if you will,
Mhm.
that are
Yeah.
keeping this energy, like this Venusian power from flowing into your life. And it's just being brought to your awareness, not to like flash bomb you with like all these kinds of like horrible things, but to show you like this is something that was there, not in the sense that we all need to be perfectly healed before we get to find love or money or whatever, but more in the
Yeah.
sense of like be aware this is something that is there, that is unconsciously being fed by negative self-talk. I was just talking to my parents the other day. We come from a culture that's very like prone to self-deprecating humor, and I think
Mhm.
that can be a very beautiful thing because it shows that your confidence in some ways, that you can like make fun of yourself, but it can veer into what happens if you're constantly making fun of yourself in a way that actually reinforces a negative belief that you actually do hold about yourself. And how does that become something that can devalue your authority towards spirits? Like, why should a spirit listen and obey to you if you think that you're not worthy of being obeyed when you're in a position of power? And,
Yeah.
or like why, I think a lot about this. I've shared a story a few times on the podcast, but like I was doing a ton of protection work for my house. And at one point, one of my spirits was just like, why do all these things? Like, why hang up all these horseshoes and these amulets and drive these railroad spikes everywhere if you're just going to leave the front door unlocked? And I took that very literally. So I said, the front door is definitely locked. And the spirit was like, no, what they elaborate, what they mean is that, you know, boundaries key.
Mhm.
If you have poor social boundaries, if your tendency to be friendly and approachable means that you allow people to think that they have greater access to you than they actually do, and you're not clarifying what your boundaries actually are, or you're not making sure there's a clear division between your professional life and your personal life, and you're inviting people over to your house that disrespect you, or that are uncomfortable to be around, or that you host them, you feed them, you clothe them, and then when they leave, they talk shit about you. For example, like
Mhm.
what does this mean for you? Like, what does it mean for you in all these different ways? Like, why bother doing protection magic if you're just gonna bypass it all anyway through your habits? And once thank you to therapy, thank you to energy work. Once that resolved, my actual protection charms were more efficacious because that thing that I was resolving within myself um, was now creating the energy, giving the energy a space to flow as opposed to constantly be kind of trespassed by my own sloppiness.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and I like that explanation because it doesn't create a clear, "Oh, here's energy over here, here's
Mm,
spirit over here, and here's what I'm doing," as 3 separate spheres, right? It's a lot of times when people talk about the need for cord cutting, it's like, yeah, there might be an energetic thing tying you to a person, but it's also the way you're acting in the world and the way that you're acting towards this person, right? So, like, sure, cut cords, do whatever you need to do around that, but also, like, maybe stop taking their calls. Maybe start interrogating, like, why you keep getting into relationships with certain with where there's a specific dynamic that leaves you feeling unfulfilled.
totally, totally. And that's not like, I love the way you put it because it's clear that it's not about like a victim blame or something, or it's like, oh, well, it's because you do this. It's like, no, it's like, think about the way everything's interrelated. Like
Yeah.
what are the factors you can't control? Because if you can't always control people's behavior, so what can you do for yourself? and to create filters, essentially, right? To be like, okay, these kinds of people, I don't want them even approaching me. I don't want them feeling comfortable finding a space in my life. And when you're talking about like having to confront these sort of negative emotions and negative memories of social humiliation and unworthiness, like that is often our spirits are trying to relate to us like you're asking for this, but this is a major block, just like in the way that sometimes not having enough materia or not having a strong enough physical link to somebody or not having which I wanted to bracket that for a little bit later because I find energy work so helpful for strengthening the lack of
Oh
physical
yeah.
link. When you don't have someone's hair or fingernails or something, like really, pouring, like creating that psychic tie by like scrying the person's picture very deeply and pulling something forth and anchoring it to that paper is just amazing. But really, uh, there is this need for certainly a responsibility, but also in thinking about like what can I do to make the life of my spirits easier, for when I'm
Yeah.
asking for things. And also, how can I help myself? Because as scary as those moments are, and they're still scary, whenever I have to go through them, I find that there is a liberation that comes with confronting it and being able to kind of approach it with a sense of forgiveness for the self and for what has happened. To be like, okay, I forgive and welcome and cherish and hug the parts of me that are hurt, that
Yeah.
are struggling, that to this day, as a grown adult, are still memories that are deeply foundationally rooted. I mean, certainly psychology understands this, right? That our childhood traumas can have such an impact, a lasting impact on our psyches. To be like, where I think about clients that I have where it turns out that wounds they have over their parents affect their love life, affect what
Hmm.
they're willing to accept from certain genders, certain kinds of people, certain expressions of authority in certain gendered bodies, and to be like, okay, let me address that so that when my wife, asks me something in a confident but not necessarily stern voice, I don't perceive it as stern and nagging and angry because of my
Yeah.
mommy issues or whatever, right? But I can approach that with a sense of levity and a sense of like, okay, thank you for respecting me and appreciating me enough to tell me this. Like, I will address that now.
Yeah, yeah. I think that, and to totally victim blame about myself. I had a very, when I was in grad school, I had a very abusive experience, and it left me feeling very bitter. And I found holding on to that bitterness attracted similarly structured abusive relationships with authority figures and jobs that I
Mm,
had over and over again. And just like working through releasing that then creates kind of a neutral ground where I can hopefully find better, and that isn't to say that I was actively seeking that out, but it's that part of me was holding on to it and
mhm,
holding on to this is what authority looks like to me, and thus that just gets reproduced endlessly. Um, and then what you were saying about creating personal ties to people, I find energy work is amazingly helpful at. Like, if you're doing juju on someone, even as simple as, like, taking their picture or signature or whatever you have, and then just putting it between the palms of your hands and working on healing energy, sending healing energy to it, then solidifies that tie. And let's say you're doing baneful work, it's still start with the healing where they'll be more accepting of that tie, of that connection, because you're going through it in a beneficent way, and then you can, put it under the sole of your shoe or whatever you want to do with it. Once that
mhm,
connection's been made.
Yeah, I think with all the energetics there, it's all something that you said earlier was really evocative of all of this, where it's energetic patterns that are still playing out that are not necessarily serving you in that moment. Where in establishing these links, being able to have an understanding of your own energetics enough to see what is open, what is closed, what is crossed, what is blocked, and establish that link and kind of follow that winding path to wherever the magic needs to go, and then enchanting it in that way. And a lot of that, like you're both saying, comes from understanding of how that works in your own life. Like anytime I do a love spell for someone, it's all the love and romance trauma is there, and it's like, okay, at least be aware of these things to work through them.
Yeah.
I think one of those important distinctions that I've seen some kind of like discourse about this of like you don't need to have these completely resolved for yourself to be able to do it for another person,
Mm,
but
No.
doing it for other people certainly helps resolve it for yourself. It's one of those things that I've noticed of like, okay, after all of these things, it's like doing enough, job spells for people has me figure out how to do job stuff for myself or like overcome that like capitalist oppression that is placed upon us.
mm,
Yeah, definitely. Like creating and part of that is like creating those relationships with the spirits around love, the spirits around jobs, and part of it is just like channeling that energy through you. It rubs off on you and on the parts of you that need to be aligned in order to pursue them for yourself.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What you were saying about how energy work can help bridge this gap, between you and your spirits, and learning a little bit more about how they're influencing the world, but also in learning how to um, release almost like lymphatically, the stress that's trapped in your body or the various traumas that can kind of serve as these pinching valves to the expression of certain energies. I think a lot about, our mutual godfather tells us a lot to be careful with what we manifest with our tongues, right?
Mhm.
The be careful what you say about yourself or say about others. The Ashe, you may be creating things without realizing it. And as somebody who um, is initiated in oral trauma tradition in Serbia, one of the things that I've had to learn to be very careful about is, and I've not always, I can tell something's wrong, like something is off in my life if I'm not doing this. Like it can flag like that's usually something where I'll be like, "Oh, I might be more depressed or miserable than I realize." Like, I can kind of keep trucking through things and just be very productive regardless of where my head is at, and, like, there'll be little ways that my body will signal to me, like, "Hey, you're actually not super okay right now, and it's okay to not be okay, but, like, maybe slow down a little bit and check in with a friend or see what's going on." And check in with the body, like, as very, like, heady intellectual people, somatic therapy and energy work can be so helpful to just remind ourselves, like, I'll be explaining my emotions for a while, and then, their therapist just goes like, okay, but how do you actually feel? Like, what's your body doing? How's your eyebrows? Are they tense? Like, where's your shoulders at right now?" And you're like, "Wait, I haven't done over explaining my emotion." And they're like, "No, no, no. Like, I'll listen to it, but where's your chest at?" Those kinds of
Mhm.
practices can really flag, like in oral charming, like, oh, am I speaking very negatively about myself? Am I constantly saying I can't do this? Or if I'm describing a conflict with a friend, am I saying like I hate that they do this to me? They're always like this, they never listen. And how does that create that in some ways, as opposed to like, I don't like when this happens.
Mhm.
I don't feel appreciated when I feel unheard in these ways. And just being aware of that, because if you're training your tongue to have power and to command spirits and to invoke the names of gods or gods and to channel all these different kinds of authority measures, what happens when you direct it on yourself?
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah, that a lot of cursing is self-cursing or is self
Totally.
yeah. And that's why, I find, like, grounding and creating a strong, a strong grounded presence is so important for magic overall because, to bring it back to the martial arts, like, so
Mhm.
much of Tai Chi, of the internal kung fu styles I do are just standing and learning to stand in a very solid position, right? There is a martial art, Yichuan, which is a refined, version of, Xing Yichuan, that is, like, n there was this guy who killed the wrong person, someone who was politically connected, and so he was imprisoned for a while, where he had a ball and chain, so he couldn't do kung fu. So he just was doing training stances, and then got to the point where he was even more powerful. But imagine pushing someone when they're if you were wearing roller skates, right? No matter how strong you are, no matter how good your body coordination is from your waist up, if you're not firmly rooted to the ground, you can't actually express that power outwardly. And it's the same thing on an energetic level. One of the things that I teach is how to have a very strong ground and how to build that grounding as just a reflex of like every time you're moving, so that when you are standing and trying and commanding your will into the world in a magical practice, you're actually firmly rooted in power rather than the equivalent of like, standing on tippy toes and trying to like push a boulder up a hill.
Mm.
Mhm. That's one of the things that I've enjoyed the most of even you sharing with me and instructing me in some of these techniques is like just how much of it is putting stuff into the ground and into the earth beneath you to actually build foundation for everything else that we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the more you have a connection to the earth, the more you can handle a lot of energy, the more you can actually project that into the world. Um, Funny story. When I first started doing qigong, it was at a time in my life where I used to climb on roofs of buildings and climb trees a lot more than I do now, which is a shame of getting old. But and I found that when I first started practicing a bunch, I started having a. I thought that I was afraid of heights all of a sudden, but it was actually like being cognizant of my connection to the earth when I was higher up then made me feel like I was, had the potential of falling. Um, yeah,
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There is so much there for investigating, like being liberated from your own patterns, which sometimes is like half the battle in magic, really.
Mhm.
I would
yeah,
say that there are so many times I'm petitioning for something and I'm so thinking like I can brute force this with witchcraft, not realizing like the actual, like, not to overuse the term. I mean, where sometimes there's a tendency to kind of overuse psychology speak to pathologize pretty normal behaviors, but like it really does incur a trauma, like in the literal sense of the word. There is an echo of the
yeah,
pain.
Mhm.
Re-exploring the roots of trauma is not inherently re-traumatizing. It is often a healing practice, actually, because trauma is not merely discomfort or pain.
Mhm.
But in this case, like when you are, just to kind of go back to your great example, Peter, of like love, or even with like relationships with authority figures. Let's say like let's say like somebody's like, I don't actually feel worthy of love, and I say I want to love her, and like I certainly do. These things are not inherently contradictory, but like I have so much, let's say, trapped feelings of like not being beautiful enough, not being worthy enough, that when the lover manifests, let's say the lover drawing work succeeds, they can't keep that lover. Like they
yeah,
sabotage, they accuse the person of cheating on them. They get so insecure when they're around other people that they feel inferior to. Like the next thing you know, like you're the person blowing up the relationship. Or
mhm,
in what you were describing about like authority figures, like, yeah, I remember I had my confidence really crushed at one point when I was just in my late teens, early adulthood, thinking that like, okay, I am really anxious about certain kinds of authority figures because of certain experiences I had that were quite inappropriate, really, where I was taken advantage of in some really negative ways, and not in the sense that like I was manifesting more of that, but that wound led me to expect that behavior
yeah,
constantly, anticipate it, and thereby create in some ways easier pathways for people who are looking to manipulate people vulnerable to that, to be like, here's another target that's vulnerable to it, because it absolutely was vulnerable to it.
yeah,
And in my spirits led me through an exercise of basically like literally energetically closing a door to that and being like, I understand how this happened, and here are the steps I'm going to take now to prevent it from happening again. It doesn't mean that I'll be free from manipulative people, but it does mean that like I will do my best to be cognizant of these things, call a friend, call somebody for help in these moments, back away from these situations. My instinct at the time was just to believe that it is purely narcissistic or paranoid or unkind to suspect that certain people might be manipulative in that way, that I shouldn't just let one bad apple, sour the whole batch, as it were. And
yeah,
I had to kind of be like, no, actually, I'm totally allowed to understand that there are certain people who will gravitate towards certain positions of authority precisely to do these things. And I'm allowed to make my heart hard to earn. And I'm allowed to be more skeptical of people who are in positions of power over me, and let them earn, take time proving that they are somebody, frankly, that I can trust in that way.
yeah, yeah. Like to make it a little personal, I recently just completely knocked that out of the park in terms of love magic.
Mhm.
Just completely, I made a list of everything I wanted in a romantic partner, and I am now over a year into a relationship with someone who checks off every box and is simply
Damn right
beautiful,
you did.
intelligent, thoughtful. I mean, she is. Every day I wake up in the morning, I remember that she is my girlfriend as I am slowly, waking back up. And my first thought is like, wow, magic is real. Like, and
Mm.
it's going to happen. And I would not have been able to do that if I had not cleared out all of that trauma, cleared out all of those negative beliefs about myself. Because even if I had gotten her in my life, I don't think I would be able to deal with that on a day to day basis.
Mm.
Of like, oh my God, here's someone who is so much better than I thought I was worthy of, and how do I live with that, right? Yeah,
And not only a good friend of ours as well, she's absolutely an incredible person, exactly as you describe, and you guys are so great together. But that story, as beautiful as it is, it also just teaches something essential, which is that there is, you hear that kind of phrase sometimes, like, "Oh, it's the right person but the wrong time,"
yeah,
and I think that's just trying to express a feeling of like you could be perfect for each other on so many levels. But in that moment, your duty is first to be truthful to yourself
hmm,
before you can even be that for other people. I don't believe in like the adage of like, oh, if you don't love yourself, you can't love other people. I think people help each other heal through all kinds of,
oh
misery.
yeah,
Like there's certainly, couples that get together and there's rough patches, but they help each other heal through that, absolutely. But there is always a desire to ask, what can I be doing differently in this situation? I think about that a lot with spirits. With like discernment, okay, yeah, I want the spirit to be truthful, but I also got to be truthful to myself. I have to be practice more radical self honesty. So in that way, like there's a lot of grief in entering a situation where you realize like, man, if I had my shit together, this could have worked out.
Mhm.
hmm,
And it's one of those things of like, and it's not all you, certainly the other person could be the one that self sabotages or it could be mutual. But if you can ask that each day you'll approach that person with radical self honesty, to like, I owe it to myself to be vulnerable, to just tell that person, hey, I'm actually moving through some stuff right now. And I don't want it to be your fault, but I'm also aware I might project some of that onto you. Like, let's flag that and let me make sure that you feel comfortable calling it out. And let me make sure that I feel comfortable stopping myself without getting defensive. There is, even just thinking about what you were saying, like this, she's an incredible person, and what happened if you met her, or tried to get into a relationship with her prior, right, to that, to kind of doing that work, it could still absolutely work out, but it may not be as blissful and as just fun as it is
Mhm.
right now, because you'd have to kind of work through that. So I think you raised a really important thing here about, um, you know, Key and I talk a lot about Aphrodite and sort of the initiations into like the mysteries of friendship and love that we kind of have experienced with her is how does love, as this kind of incredibly intense force that throughout much of human history is seen as less a feeling that you occasionally have, but more like a force that can possess you and even,
Mhm.
thinking about like those medieval romances where you're just forced to go on this epic journey and it's a madness that strikes you and you don't necessarily even get a choice. Like, how does that become an engine for a sense of peeling back the ego and a sense of radical honesty that it can be very scary to confront? Like, you meet this person and you're in love with them, and then you also totally sabotage it by thinking like they're too beautiful and smart and good for me. I think it's really wonderful when the partners can appreciate each other's intelligence and not have that be a competition, or just to be
yeah,
like, I know you're just better at this than me, and I love that for you. I love learning from you about that. But I do think that there is a sense in which it can become self-deprecating too, to be um, like I was mentioning about, like, a potential client, right, that is always like, they get the lover, but then they're so anxious about that person
Mhm.
cheating on them because they can't imagine what did they see in me? Like, why would he even stay?
yeah,
Yeah, that's like, not to keep harping on the love spell example, but a lot of the client work that I do in that area is like, my partner cheated on me, I want them back. And I'm like, my question is always like, okay, but why?
yeah,
Or like, what was going on in your relationship, in their life, in your life that led these circumstances happening? Like, the first question is always kind of like, why are you talking to me? And with all that, it's like, if these patterns are still deeply entrenched and ingrained, nothing has changed. This is just going to happen again,
yeah.
unless the binding is that strong. But at that point, what are you doing?
And do you wanna be in a relationship where it's only happening because of a binding to prevent that person from cheating on you? Like,
Yeah.
I understand if it's for, like, a socioeconomic reason, like, you need this husband to, like, not stray because that's your only way to have a stable life. Like, I'm not here to discount the
Mhm.
so much of love magic being about women maintaining some kind of financial agency in their lives.
Absolutely.
But I do think about like what you guys were both saying is that like, what are you telling your spirits and what are you telling yourself? Like, what are these narratives about like this person who broke such a sacred boundary in our relationship is someone that I want to win back, as opposed to somebody I could be like, great, you just ruled out you ruled yourself out for me. Like, you have proven that you are not that person, and now I am liberated. Of course it can hurt, and of course it can feel awful, but like, it can also become a sense of power to be like, okay, like, you failed. Like, the thing that we set up as a contract, like, you are not even able to maintain it, and I get to have better things now. Like, thank you for ruling yourself out. Now this gives me the freedom to pursue what it will actually make me feel better.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely. And a lot of that comes from feeling grounded and empowered, right? And feeling like rather than being beholden to these patterns of pain, desire, whatever that play themselves out endlessly, kind of creating a stronger boundary, being grounded and being empowered to then shift those patterns and shift them into something that's more productive, that's more healing, that's more beneficial for you.
Mhm,
I don't know. I feel like I've been talking a lot about energy and stuff like that. I do want to emphasize I do a lot of scary demon magic too. I'm
mhm.
not a total hippie.
What's the legendary line from you? I never thought the devil cult would teach me about friendship.
Yeah, but that was a complaint. That was a complaint.
I would actually love to hear from you. How has your energy practice kind of refined your grimoire work when you do work with like the Baram or other kinds of demons?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is, and I think this is, something that you've mentioned before in this conversation and elsewhere, that spirits talk to you in the language that you understand.
Yep.
A lot of times, like when I'm getting a recipe from a spirit, it will be explicitly referencing things I already have on hand. Because why would they talk about, like, why are they going to recommend that I get something that I can't get right now or I don't
Mm,
have immediately available? And I spent a lot of time talking, traveling around Asia, talking to people who don't speak English as a first language. And you never want to speak proper English to someone who doesn't speak proper English, right? Listen to the vocabulary words and the grammar patterns that they're using and repeat them back to them. And they'll be able to understand you rather than, speaking Shakespearean English. And I've just found that like different grimoire spirits that I talk to will start referencing things in terms of energy work, in terms of astral energy, whatever, that they might not say the same thing to you. But also just in terms of, it goes in two different directions. One is in terms of like empowering materia. It's like I do a lot of work with the Olympic spirits and making baths and oils and stuff like that, and just holding the materia in a bowl and then drawing in energy from that, from Ophiel or from Fool or whichever spirit I might be, Beth or a lot of Jupiterian work, right? If I'm doing a Jupiterian wealth bath or floor wash, having the calling in the spirit and then holding it in and having it empower it energetically. And so it's doing my own energy work on it to draw down energy as the spirit is putting energy into it as well to just kind of multiply that. And it winds up like my hands will be shaking and the materia feels like it's vibrating, like it gets very potent. And another thing is just if you're doing like a quick and dirty, you don't want to do a full invocation, you just want to talk to someone, doing the energy work on a spirit seal and then scrying it is a easy way to kind of wake it up and talk to them. And then, in the reverse direction, I do a lot of, spirit bags to work on myself energetically. Right. So I have, I'll work with a grimoire spirit to put a spirit in a charm bag to channel healing energy into me while I'm sleeping. And so I just put it next to my bed when I go to sleep at night, light a candle, have a glass of water by it, and I wake up feeling amazing. Honestly, the most brilliant and effective things I've ever done in magic are that and my good sleep charm bag, which I wake up feeling good every day.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Such a valuable thing for those of us with poor sleep hygiene because of Quimbandeiro practices is to have like good sleep. I have several over my bed, anti-nightmare ones, anti-hag riding stuff, anti-psychic attack, but also just like better sleep, like under the pillow,
Yeah.
under the mattress and stuff like that, just to make sure that like I need to be rested, like the energy has to rebuild right once it's spent. And I love what you were saying about kind of the scrying of the properties of the seals. I was literally just talking to my teacher about that, which is like sometimes you don't want to summon the spirit. You want to scry the properties that they've invested into sigilizing their name or into this particular seal that they've revealed, without them being there immediately. And how can we kind of harness those things sometimes independently while still appreciating that they are functions and manifestations of these spirits? And how can that give us more control, like more like fine-tuned appreciation, understanding of them?
Yeah, yeah. Vincent St. Roche and I taught a class on Solomonic Pentacles a year before last at Salem, and
Mm.
that was like for a couple of years, every week or so, Vincent would come over and we'd scry all the Solomonic Pentacles, and it was some intense shit. It was like, for some of them, for one of the lunar ones, the my hallway got ice cold, but only within a 3-foot radius of where I was scrying in. So I could like hold my hand up and there was like a sharp discontinuity where it was like freezing to just like normal temperature, which isn't how physics works. Um, but yeah, I found that like I am of the opinion that it has been my experience that the Solomonic Pentacles are deeply, deeply haunted, right? They are spirits that are taking a certain form for a variety of reasons. But you can interact with them as spirits. You can also interact with them as portals or ways to channel energy. So you can take that same pentacle and scry it and talk to a spirit if you want to, or if you're not in a context where you can do that or you need to, you can also just channel forth that energy and pour it into something, into yourself or into a situation or whatnot. And I think having that flexibility is really great. Or you can just wear it as a talisman.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think the really with all the energy, what are you using your energy for? It's the ethos of trying shit, of finding ways to make things work and finding different ways to make things like what makes them tick, especially in the context of like pulling apart grimoire magic or other system of magic in the way that you do. It's like you never find it out unless you try.
Yeah.
And with the pentacles, absolutely, yes. They're spirits all their own in many ways, in addition to the spirits that are set over them.
Yeah.
Maybe we can, as we kind of wind down, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what are some of the ways someone who's never had an energy practice before, or at least not consciously. I think we all do unconsciously, but like,
Yeah.
what are some of like run us through your beginner syllabus. Like, are there certain resources that you recommend? Are there certain ways that you would recommend people get started? Or is it just like maybe draw your attention to these things and see how they affect your practice?
Yeah, I would recommend, even if you're not gonna, like I said, like I lived in China for 5 years. I learned Mandarin and have spent times of my life where I was doing 5 hours of kung fu a day, an hour
Mm.
meditate. Not that is not for everyone, and you shouldn't like. You can do it for 5 to 10 minutes a day, and get a lot out of it. Honestly, sometimes I do it 10 minutes a day. Sometimes, for most of my life, I've only done it for like 10, 15 minutes a day. And that's great. Right. But the thing is, I feel very strongly that you have to have a basic practice that you do on a regular basis in order to train yourself to sense energy and to be able to move energy consciously. And, I have a class, Qigong for Occultists, that is in the Salem archives. But there are books. Liang Shouyu's Qigong Empowerment is really good. It just has a number of different practices. I think you're better off, especially when you're starting, to find a class and just like look for a Qigong class in your town or nearby, and just start practicing. And once you get a feeling of energy and a sense of how to move it, you can then start doing a lot more amazing things in terms of like building energy balls or just projecting energy as a part of a greater magical working or an invocation. But I think it really starts as like having just a core practice that you do a couple days a week, for 15, 20 minutes a day. Yeah.
That sounds great. Yeah, I think even just that little already, like, is gonna be so foundational to a lot of people. We've already covered like charging things and programming things and so on, but just like allowing that scrying to take place over greater planes. Like I kind of imagine it as like optometrist goggles, like different lenses come down. Like I think about the filters that I try and put on my scrying to be
Mhm.
like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna isolate and focus only on this right now. But also in seeing like um I mean, I just like being like, okay, I do a working and then I just kind of take a step back and just passively scry, watching my spirits do what I just tasked them to do
Mhm.
and seeing like where the bumps are. Like sometimes it's like, well, one of them didn't feel like my request was particularly persuasive. Like someone needs more offerings or someone needs a better link or these things could be obviously divined on ahead, but I like to see it manifest in real life in unexpected ways to be like, everything's good and the divination approved it.
Yeah.
But wait, you know what? For some reason, one more candle. Let's just put one more candle and just as like a battery to this
Yeah.
main one.
Yeah. And another really easy way to start working with energy and magic, if you already have a practice where you can consciously like project energy from your hands or in
Mhm.
general, is just do divination on where do I have to send energy to heal this headache? Or where do I have to send energy to remove blockages to me finding a job or whatever that is? And don't interpret the card, but just whatever card comes up, run energy on it for a little bit and see what happens. I've gotten a lot more effective results from that, doing energy healing on friends of just like doing it with playing cardomancy than I have on like formal like distance healing practices that I've learned.
Mhm. It's a great way to do diagnostics and have a better understanding of how your own energy flows in the world too, just by saying like, if there's a commonality of like, oh, everything's getting tangled up here all the time, maybe I should address that.
Yeah.
Well, beautiful. Thank you so much, Peter. Is there anything else you want to kind of wrap up on or touch on before we kind of wind down? That was final, words of wisdom for our audience and the things to consider. I guess maybe one thing that I would love to just talk about right before we end is what if there's one kind of thing that we've talked so much about like all the various ways being more conscious of energy can enhance your practice. If and it's interesting because I think before we even start recording we were talking about kind of lamenting that I guess the Western tradition lacks a lot of like good energy structures. Like I was wondering like what is like the number one thing really that these practices have helped you um secure in your conjure, in your Solomonic work, in pentacle work, like in all demon work, in all of it, right? In Kimbanda, like what would you say is the main kind of crux of what having a very robust energy practice has accomplished for you?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is, this is probably what I should have said at the beginning of things. When I first started getting into occultism, I would run into people who had what it seemed to me like very strong spirit contact in a way that I didn't, and my spirits say this, my spirits say that, and they were very much in contact with their spirits around them, and I would just feel really jealous, and a lot of them would just crash and burn in very dramatic fashion. And I think one thing is just being grounded and having strong energetic boundaries, having a strong sense of what is me and what isn't me, and what
Mhm.
I am letting into my space, I think has stopped me from losing my shit. Well, for lack of a better phrase, right? Or like, I had a job at the World Trade Center, and every day I was going to work at a place where thousands of people had died
Mm.
traumatically, and I found that I was thinking about jumping out of windows. I never had suicidal ideation except when I was at work, which I think is not that uncommon, right? But then I realized after a certain point, like, wait, these are not my thoughts. This is
Mhm.
me picking up on the traumatized, restless dead that are around here. And then being able to then create those boundaries, then, allow me to be someone, who is aware of things outside of myself, but can make that differentiation and stay sane. And then it's also just, I think, powered things a lot where it's empowered and made my work with materia, with baths, floor washes, and whatever, just a lot more effective. It's made it a lot easier for me to call spirits in because I can create a container for their energy that then makes it easier for them to manifest, and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's brilliant and so essential, right? To think about like, okay, if we talk so much about discernment on the podcast and just in general, like, but what does that look like in practice? Beyond just like, oh, this is that spirit and I'm able to perceive them more accurately. It's also perceiving the various spirits that comprise you, the various selves that we are
Yeah.
more accurately. And I think that's such a great example too, of being like, oh, like those aren't my thoughts, but I am having them. Like
Yeah.
they're nevertheless in me, as opposed to just purely externalizing them. But there's a freedom and liberation in being like, okay, they're also not coming from me. They're not arising from me. Like I think about certain practices I have for protection, and there are times when I engage certain spirits that are fiery warrior spirits, and next thing you know, I'm pretty fiery and argumentative, which is not my usual personality. And I'm like, oh, let me ground that out a little bit and be like, I appreciate the energy of protection that these spirits have, precisely so I don't have to be that way. Like I appreciate
Yeah.
them, but let me ground that out in a way that's more healthy, so that I'm not going to my friends and hot-headed all of a sudden.
Yeah. Yeah. And also think, I recently got a job after years of working at home. I've got a job where I have to commute into an office every day.
Uh-huh.
And like when you're working on opening up your psychic perceptions, and then every day you're stepping into a metal tube with dozens of people smashed up against each other, it gets really disorienting being able to like sense other people's feelings and thoughts at a very high volume and just being able to be like, okay, I'm shutting this down for now so that I can read my book and not
Mm,
have to deal with all y'all freaks. And then
mm,
when I get home and want to do spirit work, oh, I'm going to open this up. And
mm.
and having those filters being conscious rather than, always set on or always set off. Yeah, keeps you sane.
Yeah, absolutely.
Boundaries are important.
Boundaries key.
Boundaries key.
Key to the boundaries. Key to the secret boundaries
Yes.
of art
Yeah.
is saying no to shit.
Mhm.
Saying no to spirits. Saying no to yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Saying no to parts of yourself that are ruining your life.
Yeah.
It's saying, hey, I'm not mad at you. I'm not here to villainize you and exercise you. I'm here to give you a big hug, in the kind of chud feeding your demons way.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you, and I appreciate the way that you've helped and protected me from some really scary things. But right now, you can go do other things because I got this.
Yeah, well, that's what a really simple exercise I taught in my Salem class last year on prosperity, magic, and capitalism of just like, okay, we all have these hangups around jobs and money. Feeling those feelings and then projecting them in front of you into an energy ball where they can manifest, and then healing them
Yeah.
and saying like, "No, no, no, you're great. I love you." Because if you push against it, it's going to create resistance on their side, and you can't really force it, or at least I can't. But if you
Mm.
heal it, it can then liberate it and get rid of that those blockages.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a great way to put it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, Peter, it's been a delight. As always, I appreciate our weekly talks so much, and I'm so grateful to all of your support for the podcast. And so happy to have you on finally, and may this be the first of many to come. We're
Yeah.
definitely gonna have to do a little nap,
Mhm.
Avatar Power episode at some point, or
Yes.
just like some. I'd love to do a little lessons learned and scrying practice at some point with you too.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll have maybe a couple people on, do a little round table.
Yeah. And thank you so much for having me. I've always learned so much from listening to you. It's so amazing. I think you said it in the last episode of it's like a free class every other week. It's so informative. It's been so I've learned so much, and it's so great to be able to hopefully contribute what little I can.
Oh, you've contributed immensely. This is going to become part of our 101 series, you know, because people ask so much about energy, and I think this was one of the most concise and lucid explanations, really, coming from real concrete examples. So we're so grateful to you, and we learn just as much from you whenever we touch base and practice our fun little magical experiments together, or do our little Monroe Institute meditation.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it may just be a lesson to our, you know, our listeners, play around with it all. Like, just have fun. Like, go and be ballsy and have fun.
Fuck around and find out.
But yeah, fuck around and find out. Indeed.
Try some shit.
Try some shit. Well, thank you so much. Let's reload the Akashic records. Mine for today is Charlotte DeWitt's Overdrive. And I was gonna tell myself, oh, no more techno for a few weeks, because it is quite like a experience to put the Akashic records of Fightful Howl's Spotify list on shuffle and get like flashbang, but like aggressive, like changes in genre.
Yeah.
But for my girl Charlotte, anything. And also because I was trying to like figure out like what it was like into my head this morning, and I woke up, I was like, what's that techno track that just goes like increase the energy? The energy. Yeah, like that's the one.
For sure. And my Akashic record for today is a bit of a funny one, a certain type of energy that I think some people need to tap into, which is Cobra's feminine energy.
Oh shit! Oh, you know, I was thinking about that one, but I was like, no, it's too cunt. And then, as always, Key is cuntier than I, and is able to manifest it. Beautiful. Yeah, I there are some very good like Cobra, Slater, you know, Kim Petra's brat themed parties that we've gone to, and Key has torn up the dance floor.
Alex Slater.
Hell yeah. And I mean, well, I think one of our patrons messaged us to be like the thing that took them out of the podcast the most was like I think it was like we were talking about house protection and like sacrificing a cat under your doorstep.
Yes.
It was like drugs make the kitty underneath your threshold go purr.
Yes.
Amazing. And Peter, you just introduced us to a whole new world of music.
Yeah. My Akashic record is the World Inferno Friendship Society, A Night in the Woods, off of their album A True Story of the Bridgewater Astral League. Oh, sorry, The True Story of the Bridgewater Astral League, which is all about astral projecting to do crime, which is my recommendation to all of you.
Literally go, if the CIA can astral project, so should you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Remote view that shit right now.
Yes. Find secret missile bases around the continental United States and other locations.
Don't let that just exist in the Cold War, guys.
Yeah, it's still going.
It's still going.
The Cold War never ended.
No.
This is your activation codes.
Rise up, soldiers. Yeah, get on our Discord and start doing scrying practice of old military allegedly abandoned silos. Go scry those mountains in upstate New York that apparently have like doomsday bunkers in them.
Yes.
Oh God.
Tell us if they exist.
See who's inside.
It's Harambe. Well, amazing. And the very cute License to Depart, part of the refrains of many a Brazilian folk song, as well as many a ponto. A little good night for whom it is night, and good day for whom it is day. You know, you give it to us in your sultry tones.
Of course. Boa noite pra quem é de boa noite. Bom dia pra quem é de bom dia.